Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sarah Jane, and I am delighted today to be joined by my guest, Elizabeth Wey. Elizabeth, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today.
You're very welcome, Sarah. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Now, our topic is, where have I gone? I've gone to the wrong place on my page. I apologize. Echoes of the Soul, exploring past lives for personal transformation. But first of all, let me introduce you more fully to Elizabeth. Elizabeth's journey has been a remarkable tapestry woven from her experiences in the Australian Air Force and her upbringing in a creatively rich family, both culturally and spiritually. Embracing her innate gifts as a medium and spiritual healer, she pursued her passion for helping others. At the age of 65, Elizabeth achieved a doctoral degree in transpersonal psychology, further solidifying her dedication to personal growth and healing. For the past 40 years, she has taught internationally, accredited in various modalities, including past life regression, end-of-life facilitation, energy healing, and psychic mediumship. An author of 2 insightful books, Elizabeth's family remains her anchor and inspiration, guiding her to fulfill her long-held vision of being in service to others. Elizabeth conducts international workshop retreats and training programs for professionals while maintaining her private practice. Through these workshops and teachings, she continues to empower individuals on their healing journey. It is a real pleasure to have you with us today, and I'm looking forward to learning more about past life and sort of the support it can bring. So thank you for that. But first and foremost, the question I have for you is, share a little of your story, obviously beyond sort of what I've just shared, and why this particular aspect?
Well, I guess it started with my beautiful grandmother, who, of course, is long since passed. And she was a Rosicrucianist, which is a spiritual religion. And I was always intrigued by these ladies that used to visit my grandmother for these secretive meetings, which I didn't realize what they were until I was much older. And so I kind of had an interest in and an awareness of my gifts at quite an early age. But of course, life gets in the way, and you marry and you have children, and the craziness of ordinary life takes center stage. But I've always had an inclination to be of the greatest value to people. And I guess that sort of stemmed right back from when I was young, of this sort of empathic, compassionate feeling that I've carried into this lifetime. And so it was a natural progression to reach the point that I'm at now. And of course, all the ups and downs that go with the learning and the growing and the understanding brought me to this point. And I must just say, when I listen to you talking about me, I'm thinking, what an exhausting woman that is. She's done so much. It's hard to believe it was me you were talking about. But the thing is that I've always been really intrigued with the unknown and intrigued with how the human spirit seems to be able to rise to the occasion under most circumstances, and why people of different, from different walks of life, not meaning one is better than the other, but have struggles or don't appear to have any struggles. So I've always been intrigued, but the way people tick. And that's really what drove me to decide that I would commit my life to a life of service, of being value to others through learning, through growing, through developing my awareness, making mistakes, learning from my mistakes, and just gaining wisdom, and most of which has come from I call it upstairs, but the spirit world. So the doctoral degree gave me a sense of an anchor to how people see the way they can heal, what they can do, and transpersonal psychology is always a very interesting way to deal with those things. It's sort of not medical. And I need to make that clear to everybody that, you know, I haven't got any degrees in Western medicine, but I have a lot of knowledge, and I'm using that knowledge now and hopefully into my late 90s to be able to continue doing this work.
And that just is, isn't it? We may not have the knowledge of the medical profession, but so there are so many people that bring a wisdom from life experiences, a wisdom from their own experiences. I refer to it as my healing journey. What has supported us? What has helped us? And one of the reasons I ask people to share their story is so that people can get a real sense of where you've been, what you've done, and how you've got to where you are.
You certainly haven't got enough hours in the day to hear that whole story, Sarah, I can assure you.
But yeah, it's getting that sense of what people have gone through, and that understanding that they've been through it, I can. You've had a family. The experiences you must have had with the family are going to have made a huge difference to how you can empathize and support others.
Yes. Well, you know, one of the things that I've loved doing over that period of my life, I'm more into adulthood than young, is I've traveled to about 64 countries now. And so I've met all these different cultures and had to experience and understand the values and cultures of other countries, which truly and honestly has had a huge effect on me personally, but also professionally. And I just want to make a note about medicine, Western medicine, because I remember years ago, one of my patients asked me or said to me, can you ask my subconscious mind, is it really necessary to have Western medicine? Why can't we just use all these beautiful gifts that we're actually all born with? Whether we use it or not is another matter. And the answer came back and said from the higher self that, yes, we do need Western medicine. Yes, we do need scientists that are talented, amazing people that find ways of healing us. So, for example, a broken leg, now they can look after a broken leg, and through our and I said to this subconscious mind, why are we suffering so much here now? Why do we need all this help from the the allopathic side of medicine? And they said, because we created it ourselves. Instead of focusing on what we need to do and how we need to live and move forward in our lives, we create all these traumas and dramas and victim kind of thinking that then puts the body under stress, and therefore it reacts accordingly. Like it just has to react accordingly. So I actually have a great respect for the allopathic medicine world and the scientific world. I don't agree with everything, of course. And, there's great arguments to and from about the pharmacy companies and the money making and the vitamin world certainly make a lot of money. But underneath it all, if you kind of scrape away all of that nonsense and you look at how we can combine the work that we do, or I do, I'm talking about myself today, that I do, and the medicine and the Western medicine world, we should be able to work in great harmony. And I've taught a lot of doctors now, and nursing practitioners who are interested now in how they can combine both, which I'm very excited about.
And that is 100% what it's about. Everything is relevant and valid. It's just sort of how we combine it for the greatest good of the human being, sort of without detriment to the planet. So let's get into the past life. Some people may be unaware of the fact that you can even have past life regression. So can you explain just very briefly how an actual session goes, so that people can get a sense of that?
Of course. Well, I guess the most important thing, first of all, is there are people that don't believe we have had previous lives. And I honour that and I respect that. That's absolutely not for me to judge or not judge. You know, it's just how it is. But if we can understand the value in having a past life regression, which I'll explain in a moment, then we can learn more about ourselves in order to move forward. There isn't a person on this earth that says, I don't know what I'm here for, what's my purpose, what's the use, all of those kinds of things. Why does this always happen to me and nobody else? You know, what they don't realise that it actually probably happens to everybody else. So in preparation for a past life regression, I actually spend quite a lot of time with the individual way before I meet them. So I can do it in person and I can do it through Zoom. And I teach my students, do not do this on Zoom. And I do it on Zoom. Why do I do it on Zoom? Because I've been doing it a very long time and I know how to deal with it. I know how to handle it. And so to explain how this works, in the initial stage when I'm sending the person a letter explaining the process of what will happen, I'm asking them to send me a list of all the questions that they want answers to. Can be anything. It actually does not matter what it is, other than we don't have permission to ask a question about somebody else other than themselves unless we have their permission, because that's all very, very important to do that. So while we're doing that, while they're writing those questions, and then I do a pre-interview once we begin, when they've arrived, the subconscious mind, I call it like a secretary for the soul. And the subconscious mind, in my understanding and my belief through all the work I've done with many people, is we have the same subconscious mind that travels with us, with the soul, right from the beginning of our journey. So it's like a secretary. It registers everything, all our nuances, all our ups, downs, ins, outs, right, wrong, all of that. And it doesn't judge them. It just holds them, almost like an Akashic record. And so when the individual is writing their questions down and I'm talking to them, the subconscious mind's going through its filing cabinet, finding the two most appropriate past lives to show the individual that connects directly to their current lifetime. Because what's the point of just seeing any old past life? There's no value in that. And so once we get to that stage, at that point, I make it very clear that I don't hypnotize anybody. You know, I can, but I don't. And that we're just talking. It's a process of just getting the individual into a very relaxed state of mind, so that it's a bit like that, like little anesthetic you get before you go into a deep anesthetic in an opera, and you don't care what's going on. You're just really happy about it all. And of course, I have the ability to do that because I've been doing it for so long, you know, with what I do. So once we're into that, doing that, we get them to a point of seeing a past life. They're in it. They're actually in the life, seeing it, tasting it, feeling it, reading it, the whole thing. And at the end of that past life, when I take them to their last day of their life, which is a very important aspect of this work, Sara, because a lot of people have fears of various things, of heights, of drowning, of fire, of all sorts of things. And they learn very quickly in that stage of the regression that the fear that they're holding doesn't belong to this lifetime. It's something that they've carried forward. And that is an incredibly healing moment in the whole manner of things. And then I ask, why did you choose that lifetime? And you'll be surprised that everyone actually tells you why they chose it. Because I'm talking to the entity of that lifetime, not the current individual. What strengths did you gain? What did you bring forward that you still need to learn? So all this is being recorded and registered for the individual to learn from. Very, very important information. And it kind of just falls into place. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, or this goes here and that. Oh my God, there's the picture of what I'm all about. And then if it's necessary, I'll take someone into a second past life. Sometimes it's not necessary, sometimes it is. And then we come to the magic moment when I ask permission to speak to the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is a very, very powerful, intelligent part. America calls it the unconscious mind. When I think of unconscious, I think of someone carting it and falling over and faint, so we've all got a different idea of that. Just ask my professor that I learnt with, at the university. He and I argued over that point for a long time. We finally agreed to disagree. So I asked permission to speak to the subconscious mind, and then I asked the subconscious mind, why did you show Sarah that lifetime? And then we find out. And then from that, I become curious and ask why and how, and is there anyone from this lifetime that was in that lifetime? All the things that will help the individual to move forward in their current life. And that takes time, because I take my time. And then once we get through that, then we look at the questions that the person has brought. Now, the subconscious mind will not reveal anything at all that it has not been given permission to by the individual. So I can't ask questions that are sacrosanct, that have got nothing to do with me. They don't reveal, the subconscious mind doesn't reveal secrets that the person's holding on to. They don't want anyone to know about. It's a very protective part of who we are. And that just takes its time, and then eventually I bring the person out. It can take anywhere between 2 and 3 hours. And when I ask the person, how long do you think you've been there for? They usually say about 20 minutes, half an hour. But from my point of view, I'm doing everything I can to bring as much information forward to the individual so that they can actually hold on to something to move forward with in their life. That's how it happens.
For those watching, if anybody's got a question, please feel free to put it into the chat. So please feel free to do that. It sounds fascinating. I just know that if anybody who says to me, right, have you got a question you want to ask? The answer is no. Is there anything you want to know? It's no. It's always no for me. I think it goes back to me for the childhood of I want, don't get, I need, don't get, sort of, if you don't ask, you don't get. And it's just like, and it took me years to understand the difference between I want being a demand and please may I have being an ask, but it's fascinating that, and you're detached from any outcome. That I think, from what you've said is a really essential part of this for the individual. It's about them. It's got actually nothing to do with you. Nothing.
So I'm the facilitator, the link between their higher self, because perhaps there are people out there that like to meditate and connect with their higher self, but we always have that other part of us, it starts with an E and ends with an O and it's got a G in the middle, that likes to have a little bit of a say. And actually, sometimes the ego will interfere in a regression if the left side of the brain starts to come into play. And I usually ask it to step aside and give it an opportunity to converse with me later. And I actually can be quite firm about that. I remember one fellow that came to see me, a lovely gentleman, and he, the first time wasn't successful because he was so nervous. So the second time I asked him to come back the next day. I'd never give up on anybody, and I always get them there. And so the next day I said, this is what we're going to do. If you can feel your ego stepping in, what I want you to do is to tell it to get over in the corner and blow me down if that's exactly what happens. And he sits up, he's really deep in a very relaxed state, and points over to the corner and says, ego, get over in that corner now. I was so amused, but it worked, because the ego's had a lot of control over us. And even in meditation, it still has an opportunity. There is still that slither of an opportunity for it to have a say in doing a regression, which you have to say past life regression, but it really is such a sacred opportunity to connect with that part of yourself that is very difficult to do on your own. It's being able to have it facilitated to be able to come to conclusions that will be of the greatest value is the importance of having a facilitator that can do that. And you have to be detached, because you've got to be on your game all the time. I've got to know the questions to ask. I've got to know when to be curious. I have to know when to pacify. I have to know when to feel sympathetic. I have to know when all those things are constantly on the horizon for me, the unknown that will come. And at the end, the consequences of that is the individual, it changes lives, quite frankly.
Oh, I can believe that. I'm sort of thinking about, I know my work is very different, and it's very much dealing with the younger aspect of today's self, but it's that support of people that can make a huge difference. So energies that they've brought forward from that lifetime to this lifetime, and that have made a difference to us from early childhood, sort of
birth, actually.
Well, actually, preconception to a certain degree, depending on what's happened at the point of conception, it can make a massive difference all the way along.
That's right, it can. And even for, I have a client whose son has speaking difficulties, sight difficulties, and just about every other thing. Beautiful little child. And what's very interesting is that when we looked, I didn't do a past life for him directly, because he's way too young. I think he's about 6 or 7. But through another way, which I can actually channel, with permission, I can go into and see a past life without doing the regression. And I discovered that he was a sage, like a wise healing man in Egypt, a long time ago. And it was a Bedouin healer in the desert of Egypt, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, at a time when it was frowned upon to do this kind of healing work. So they gouged his eyes out, or burnt them, I think, if I remember rightly, and cut his tongue out. And so in this lifetime, he's come with those impediments, but through learning to accept them, which he will as he gets older, and he's got an amazing support network in his family, he will overcome that challenge that he had from that time and move forward. So it's all very fascinating. Not everyone has their eyes burned out and their tongue cut out, by the way. No. They can have very simple deaths, but across the board, I've experienced hearing every kind of death you could possibly die from. There is just very little left. I think that how you can die that I've experienced through regressing people. but it makes sense to somebody. My main aim is to bring comfort, to bring an understanding. I have a colleague that's written a book called This Isn't the End, which is Alex Rako is his name. And he's quite right. It isn't the end. But the fact of the matter is we don't want to keep, I mean, one might ask the question, how long do you want to reincarnate for? You know, forever? No, we don't. So when we understand what the soul has come into a lifetime for, Sarah, and to see how it's progressed or how it's holding itself back, we're giving the opportunity to the individual to pay attention to that and work with it. And when they work with it and move forward, they're less likely to have multiple more lifetimes because it's the soul on the journey of learning and growing. I've got no doubt in my mind about that.
Oh, no, I mean, sort of, for me, and again, this has come actually from conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh. Our soul wishes to experience everything because actually where it is and what it is pure unconditional love. That is who, at the absolute core of our being, we are. And that is all that our soul knows. And so we have these physical human experiences so that the soul can, what was it, the way you put it, know itself much more fully. And so we're going to have those lifetimes of poverty and amazing riches, of being the raped and being the rapist, being the murderer and being murdered. And I'm obviously going for extremes here.
It's not extreme. It's not extreme. It's how it is.
Yeah.
We all have those experiences. Everybody will have that experience at some point. And it's not the soul. So the question really is, why bother? If the soul is so loving and unconditionally beautiful and all those pretty words, why is it bothering? What's the point of coming here? If it's already pure before we become human, what's the point? Good question, isn't it?
It is a really good question, but I think, to me, there's an aspect of an answer there. If you only know one thing, but there is the opposite for everything. There's light and dark, isn't there? There's heat and cold, as we were talking about before we started. It's really what with you.
Why would the soul bother to know that if it's pure to begin with and only love? Right?
It's obviously got curiosity, hasn't it?
I don't think it's so much that. I think that this is my take on it and why I do this work. So for every black, there's a white. For every up, there's a down. For every in, there's an out. So upstairs, you know, as I've alluded to, as I call the spirit, the ethereal realm, there's the goodies and the baddies. And that's another conversation for another time. But it's a network of energy that can either be positive or negative energy. So to keep the divine source, the creator, the light alive, it has to have this pure love, this light, and it has to re-energize like a battery. And so it takes a part of itself and creates a soul that becomes a human or an animal, or, you know, many things we can become. We don't always come as a human. That's another story for another time. But anyway, so we go through all these experiences so that when we go back into the light and become part of the light once again, we have that empowered, brilliant wisdom that a brand new soul could not possibly have. It's like a brand new baby. So we buy our bus ticket and we come down here. We do our, you know, our tenure on earth. We go back, we discover what we should have done and what we could have done and what we, you know, what we did do that was good and what we didn't do that was right. All the while, the soul is developing itself to become dare I say, enlightened to a point where it becomes once again a largest part of the wisdom of the divine creator.
It knows itself. It knows. Yeah, it's all about learning, experiencing, and sort of. And I mean, at the beginning, you sort of talked about mistakes, and I look at it and I think, but is it really a mistake, or is it just another step in our journey? When we
It's,
learn, when we do
yeah,
something and we learn from it,
sure.
is
But
it really a
we
mistake?
also have free will, which is a gift that we get. And I often say, what sort of a gift is that? To be truthful with you, because free will, it's like giving a child a bag full of lollies. And then when we do, people argue about the word mistake. It's a word. But when we make a decision that isn't to our greatest value, our greatest benefit, then obviously it's something we should not have done, even though we need to do it in order to learn and grow. So the first time it's a mistake, the second time it's not one, because we're using our free will to either carry on, move on from that and to improve and to grow forward, or we keep continuing to do the same darn thing over and over and over. And actually, I might say to the people listening tonight, or the ones that will listen back to it later, which in Australia they will, because they all think I'm going on at 7:30 tonight, and it's only like 6 o'clock or something here now, is to realise that all this work that we put into understanding ourselves and the wonder of what we're here for or what our purpose is, we find out that purpose by asking ourselves, what do I keep repeating that? Why do I keep repeating this particular thing that I do, whatever that is? Well, that's got to be something I'm here to learn, because we come back to grow forward. And there are people that come through into another lifetime to be of service to the individual that they've made an agreement with, so they give them a second or third or fourth chance. I had a client who'd been married to the same man in 4 different lifetimes. And this lifetime, she actually finally gave him the flick. He had his last chance, and he understood that on a soul level. He understood this was his last opportunity. And then she had the opportunity to say, enough is enough. So when we are doing this work, when I'm doing this work, I'll put a lot of effort, a lot of time in developing the technique that I wrote, which I didn't learn it from anybody else. I might just tell everybody, I've been to a couple of seminars, but I developed this slowly over the years and changed it almost every year, honing it into something really magnificent through the experiences that I had with my patients over all that period of time, because they're the ones that teach us.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day now, it's sort of at a point where I can be confident, 100% confident, that the individual that's having a regression will find the answers to everything they want to know and more.
There's always going to be the and more. You talked about sort of those things that you just keep doing over and over and over. And why does this keep happening to me? And it's because we keep reacting in exactly the same way. And it's, how do we break that? How do we understand? I suppose, how do we understand it to start with? And how do we break that? How do we stop reacting so that we can create a new and different outcome and hopefully move beyond whatever that is? And obviously what you're talking about, I believe, with your past life regression, is being able to sort of see that there is a root of that prior to this lifetime. And so it's supporting you to be able to fully let go of that?
I think rather than saying let go, it's more so to understand what it is, and then recognizing that it's not, that it actually, it's just followed you until you recognize what it is, and then you move on from it. You can't let go of stuff that's happened because it's part of the tapestry of your life. It's part of it. And, you know, it's three of my most disliked words: let it go. Because it, the funny thing is that it's fear that holds us, that imprisons us, because the fear of the unknown, sometimes it's safer to live in pain and agony and continue making the mistakes we make because we actually know it.
Yeah.
We feel safe with, even though we hate it, but we know it and we feel comfortable with it. The very idea of shedding or recognizing what that is and moving forward, it's like taking the wings off a butterfly. You know, it how does it know how to fly if it hasn't got the wings? So that's very much a part of me being able to ask the right questions, because I record the whole thing so people get a copy of the regression, is to ask the right questions to plant the seed of intrigue into the individual so that they can recognize when something comes and go, well, I don't need to fear that anymore. I don't need to, go into another domestic violence relationship anymore, or I don't need to feel like a victim, or I don't need to attach myself to the outcome of someone else's problem. Amazing what we hold on to that doesn't belong to us. You know, we're very good at doing that, and the average person does do that. So the intention of the whole matter, Sara, is for people to see in a safe environment the past lives that connect to their current lifetime, to give them an opportunity to assess their current life and how they can make changes. So towards the end of the regression, I usually say to the subconscious mind, is there something that you wished Sara had asked today? And you'd be amazed at what comes out. And it's usually something very prophetic and very important. Because it's coming out of the person's mouth, not mine, it's a bit hard to discredit it, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And, you talked about sort of free will. We are here with that free will. The way I sort of look at it is we make that agreement to come down here, what we're going to be going through, etc., etc. But then we forget everything. And as the more advanced our soul becomes, the more we actually know on a soul level. But we don't remember any of that. I suppose that's why we're born as a tiny baby it's very strange. I actually think until we learn to talk, we still have some aspects of connection.
We have all aspects, Sara, not some.
I'm just thinking of something that happened with one of my nephews when he was still a baby, and my sister was pregnant, and it was before he could talk and understand, and he was screaming in his cot. They called the doctor round. The minute the doctor walked in the door, all smiles. The doctor ripped into them because it was a weekend for wasting his time. Within a couple of days, they realized the baby in her womb was dead. Before he was able to speak, he had that connection with that baby. We have connections we are totally unaware of when we start stepping into that ability to communicate. Does that make sense?
About the age of 5 or even 6, children have that ability. There are the rare individuals that grow up their entire life being aware of that, and they're a pleasure and a joy to meet. But I was thinking when you were also telling me that story about another really interesting one, that when this woman was pregnant with her child, she heard this voice one night saying, "You need to call me Timothy." And when her little boy was there that night, we were at sort of some kind of a function, and the baby was born, it was a boy. She didn't know it was going to be a boy. She didn't want to know the sex, but there he was, and his name, she called him Timothy. When he was old enough to speak, he said to his mother one day, "I'm so pleased you call me Timothy. I'm so pleased you heard me and called me the name I wanted to be called."
But you see, that is something I actually believe, actually part of my own work, is that I believe we choose our name, and that our parents are guided to that name that we are called.
Yeah,
And very briefly, I was christened Sarah Jane, but as a baby and as a young child, I was called Jane. And it was me that changed it. And I realize now that it was me that was the only person that ever really rejected me when I changed my name. So I actually see our name as being something we choose, and that is really important as an aspect of ourselves.
Well, that's an interesting take. I haven't really thought about that before, or I don't have an opinion of that because I haven't experienced that for myself, other than that woman telling me that story about her child. There are so many little unknown things that I guess we get the full story when we go back home upstairs, at the end of each lifetime. But I think the most important role that we have as practitioners, whatever work we do in the energetic field, and we're talking about my work tonight as a regression therapist, is to be part of having a life of service, which I consider that to be my work, to give people the greatest opportunity to be of the greatest value to themselves. And when the questions are asked, when I'm speaking with the individual before the regression begins, I ask questions that they probably haven't thought about. And there are a multitude of questions that are involved in that, because all those questions and all those little networks of understanding bring into a reality the purpose of us being here. And I don't think we're meant to know the whole story, because it's like if we get all the answers, we're not going to make any particular effort. So a little bit of work has to be done on our behalf. We can find out that we need to learn this or do that. It's one thing to find out, it's another thing to do it. And so the responsibility then falls back onto the individual when they listen back to their regression. And I usually ask at the end of a regression to the subconscious mind, how many times should Sarah listen to this recording? And there was a young girl, her name is Matilda. She lives in London, but she was over here and visiting, and she was a friend of my niece's. And she said, "Can I have a regression?" And she was studying a degree at uni over there in psychology. So when I asked the subconscious mind, because it was a very profound regression, very profound lifetime she had, how often should Matilda listen to this regression? And the subconscious said every day for the rest of her life. Because it was so important for the work that she was going to go into to balance the lifetime she saw with the work that she's doing in this lifetime. Very important. Of course, she's not going to listen to it every day for the rest of her life. The subconscious mind was saying, really, take notice of what I've told you today, because it's going to impact your life from now on. And I think all regressions are like that. If you allow yourself to be impacted by it, to appreciate the value of it, then it's very worthwhile.
It's supporting you. It's about helping you to have an understanding. This is what I'm feeling from this, is understanding, and to support you to do what it is you're here to do, what you're here to bring, to have as fulfilling a life as you can from what you're here to bring, I suppose, is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, it's understanding your strengths and your weaknesses and accepting both of them and what you can work on. You know, when you understand where your weaknesses are and your strengths, we've all got them. I mean, that's part of being human. You know, being able to recognize that and work at it, like not to become perfect, but to recognize the where you need to improve. So someone that's moody, someone that snaps at you, you know, you say, can you do the dishes? And they give you a, you know, they like snap back. It's not the dishes that they're snapping at, the idea of it. It's learning to understand how to control emotions so that you are treating the other person with respect, or whatever that might be. So there's always a weakness that we are here to improve on. One of the books that I wrote is called Earth, the Toughest Boot Camp in the Universe. And it is. And it is. But when we leave the spirit world to come into a new life, we don't come with a blank, you know, airline ticket. We know exactly what we're here to do. And if we listen to ourselves, when we feel drawn, like I've listened to myself, my awareness of being driven to be a healer and to be able to do the work that I do, and I feel so comfortable with it. It's like my second skin, that I know I'm doing the right. I'm doing what I came here to do, because you feel it. So whether you're a cleaner of houses, whatever you do, if you are comfortable doing it, if you're not just doing it, oh God, I've got to go to work because I've got to earn money, you know, you're robbing yourself of opportunities. And that doesn't mean we all have that opportunity. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do for survival, but there's always that opportunity to change. Always. There really is never a reason not to.
Yeah. I must admit, I think of the word change and I think it's about growing. It is about growing beyond where you are. But I love the fact that we all do use different words and they have different meanings for us. But that's all part of this, as you referred to it, as a tapestry of life. We are at sort of the end of this, and it's been fascinating. It really has. Sort of, Elizabeth, thank you. But is there anything we haven't touched on? I'm going to share your website, and I would really encourage people to connect with you. And I'm trying to think how you would say that. I'm thinking Lynn, but it's got an N at the front. Lynn, have you had the past life regression yourself? And what impact has it had? So I'm guessing that's for you. And I was thinking exactly the same. Have you ever had a past life regression done on you?
Yes, I have. I allow my students to practice on me. And I have this incredible ability. I've got to the point, hi, and she's one of my students, actually, Sara. And so I have the ability to be able to observe what's going on, as well as allowing myself to go into the past life. And most of my lifetimes have been as a healer, a teacher, the majority of my past lives. That's what I've done. And so what was the second half of her question?
An impact.
It has a huge impact on me, because it kinds of confirms to me why I'm doing what I do. It confirms to me and gives me the encouragement and the strength to know that I'm got the right pair of shoes on, because it's very interesting when we're doing our work. We can often feel like we're fraudulent, like, am I really meant to be doing this? Have I, who do I think I am to have this wisdom to pass on? But when you do have a past life and you do see the lives that you've had, then you recognize that you do have the wisdom to talk. So one of the past lives that I will tell you about, which is really fascinating, and I'm only going to tell you a slither of it, is that it was at Stonehenge. Now, all I know about Stonehenge is what everyone else in the world knows about Stonehenge. I've never studied it. I didn't get involved in it. Like I'm not a big druidy kind of girl. But there I was, one of the big stones was lying on the ground, and I was standing on that. I was dressed in white, and I was talking to this group, and I think they probably were druids, to be honest with you. They all had these brown, monkish kind of outfits on. And I was just, my energy around me was just this brilliant white light, just glowing, and they were in awe of what I was saying. And that was quite remarkable. And another one I'll quickly tell you, because I know you want to finish, is I was walking along a beach, and I walked up this slope of a hill, and I got to the top, and I dived into the water. And the next minute I had all these dolphins swimming with me. And I came out of the water onto this island of pure white sand, and there was this chair that I sat on, and all these dolphins came up out of the water and somehow I was sending healing energy to the dolphins, and they were sending it to me. It's so ridiculous, you can't make it up. So you learn all these things, and that's the value of it all.
And as we've said, we have a connection with all, and why wouldn't we have that connection with the animals the way we do with humans? You've just got to watch, they think about the horse whisperers, and an amazing video about a lady who was able to speak to a black panther or communicate with a black panther. And it's absolutely amazing, of course. And the why me, I've had that so often, and then I'd have to correct myself. Why not me? Because, we're all special in our own unique way. No one is more or less special than anybody else.
Absolutely.
And every role in this lifetime is like the wheels, the cogs of a mechanism. And any one of those wheels or cogs that is out of sync can make a mess of the whole thing. So we're all essential for the roles that we are here for.
Of course.
I don't belittle anything or anyone, because it is as it is. It's just important that we interact within our own life. We are active and move along in our own lives. If we don't participate in our own life, then nothing's going to happen.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And just having the courage to move forward and not to feel the victim is the most important thing of all.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you inviting me onto your show, Sara. I really appreciate that, and having the opportunity to be able to speak to, and I know there are a lot of people that are going to listen to this that I know once they realise, that they can look at it later. But I really appreciate it, because any opportunity to be able to share knowledge worldwide that is going to be of the greatest value to somebody is all we can hope for. So thank you very much.
No, it's my pleasure. It really is. And thank you so much, because yes, if you're watching live, brilliant. And I've just put Elizabeth's website into the chat. Please, if you feel you wish to connect with her, do. You'll learn more from her, more on the website. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching the program later, under the video on YouTube is also Elizabeth's website. Sort of, there's no sales pitches here. It's just, if you've been spoken, if this has spoken to you, you wish to learn more, please connect with Elizabeth. As she said, as much as she is in Australia, and I'm in the UK, it doesn't matter where in the world you are. We always make that ability for us to connect. So please sort of do feel free to connect with Elizabeth. It's been such a pleasure. Just very quickly, next week, I have a today's conversation, the gifts of wisdom found within life experiences. Scott and myself are being joined by Carol Pilkington and Virginia Rounds Griffiths. All of us were authors in the book Gifts of Wisdom, Practices for Healing and Empowerment. And we're going to be sharing more wisdom beyond that we shared in the book. Elizabeth, thank you. Thank you to those of you who've watched live. I know most of you have kept really quiet, but that's brilliant. Sometimes I think that's more important because people have been listening, and it's the listening that's the important thing. Elizabeth, thank you. Take care, be safe, stay well. Namaste, sweet souls.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.